Hey everybody, welcome to Minute on the Mountain. I'm out on a little shed hunt today. Just picked up this 4-point with this extra on it. Maybe my coolest find so far this year. But I thought I would do some tips on how to find more sheds. Now let me preface this by saying I don't pretend to be the greatest shed hunter in the world. There are a lot of guys who find more sheds than me. But I do seem to find as many or more than the guys I go out with, and I definitely find more than I used to. I've learned a lot. And so this isn't an exhaustive list. In fact, I'm not going to talk a lot about glassing, and the guys who really get after it and find a ton of sheds, they spend a lot of time behind the glass. That's just not my favorite way to spend the day. So I'm not going to talk a lot about glassing, but I would obviously say that that's a big part for the guys who find a lot of sheds. And I'm going to talk mainly about finding mule deer sheds. I find a few elk sheds every year. I have found a handful of moose sheds in my life, but mostly what I find are mule deer sheds. So the first thing that I would just encourage you to do is pay attention to elevation, especially if you're finding browns. If you find a brown shed, you know it's from this year. If you're carrying your onX with you or any other of those apps where you can mark a waypoint, pay attention to the elevation. Because typically the deer, in my experience, are going to hang out about the same elevation throughout that winter based on snow depth, temperatures, things like that. So paying attention to your elevation, and when you get into some brown sheds, trying to stay around that elevation is going to help you quite a bit. The second thing I would encourage you to do is follow fence lines. Fence lines have been very good to me over the years. When the deer jump over and land, a lot of times that impact will knock an antler off. Sometimes deer will get lazy and they don't jump, but they'll crawl through it. They'll catch an antler. The one thing I would say about fence lines, if you see boot tracks, don't waste your time. When you're on the side hill, we're on a ridge and you see boot tracks, obviously you can go perpendicular to those, you can get away from them, but if there's already a set of boot tracks following the fence line, you're likely not going to find anything. They've already picked it up. So I'm going to do a couple of more as I hike today. We'll stop and give you a handful of tips. And again, I don't pretend to know everything about shed hunting. I would love it if you guys in the comment section will add some things that you've learned over the years, especially you whitetail shed hunters. I don't really find any whitetail sheds. The parts of Utah where I spend all my time, we don't have any whitetails. So would love to hear what you guys think about finding more whitetail sheds. All right, we're going to give you a couple more tips, and I just found this 3-point. It's super old, but it's a nice 3, nice and tall. So I saw this one, probably 25 yards away, 30 yards. I can only see white. So that's the other thing I want to mention that's helped me find a lot more sheds. I don't look for full sheds. I look for tips, tines, and I look for bases, and I look for color. Rarely are you just going to see a full shed laying out because somebody else have already picked it up. So it's just like when I'm hunting deer, I don't look for whole deer when I'm glassing, right? I'm looking for the white around the rump if it's a mule deer. I'm looking for triangle shapes for ears. I'm looking for that white throat patch. Rarely am I just, in my mind looking for a whole deer. And I found that the same is true for sheds. So again, I'm looking for tines, I'm looking for tips, and I'm looking for bases, and I'm looking for color. So that means I'm looking for white because I'm looking for hard white or chalk. And then in the sage, I'm looking for, if I can get them when they're fresh brownies, they're going to be a little darker than the sage. Now after they've been sitting out a few weeks, they blend right into the bark, the root of the sage, whatever you call it. But that's another tip. Again, don't look for the whole shed. Look for pieces of the shed. And then always have glasses with you. So even though I don't glass a lot for sheds as far as just sitting and glassing, if I think I see a shed, I can, 40, 50 yards away, if I spot color, then having my binoculars with me allows me to check from there versus maybe going out of my way another 40 or 50 yards or backtracking another 40 or 50 yards. So having binoculars with me, I'm almost always going to find more sheds when I have them. Now, I will check out anything. So this shed I just found, this 3-point, I could see white from where I found the previous shed. And I put the glasses up to it, but just at my angle, all I could see was the curve. And I still couldn't tell 100% for sure if it was a shed. So anytime that's the case for me, then I'm gonna beat feet and I'm gonna go check it out. I'm never gonna walk away from something that I think might be a shed. I always want to get confirmation. So anyway, there's a couple more tips. We'll see if we can find a few more today and give you a few more tips before we wrap up. A couple other tips that I would mention is pay attention to winter kill. You know, if you're in an area where there's winter kill, then you know that during the time of year that mule deer shed, they've been hanging out in that area. So if I'm hiking in an area and I just never see winter kill, that's typically not an area I'm going to go back to a lot. And then the other thing I would say is stay focused on the hike out. I can't count how many times I haven't found anything, or I've found very little, maybe just one shed, and you know, you start to get discouraged, and as you head back to your vehicle, you're just kind of tromping and not really focused because you've been out all day and you haven't seen much. And I have found a lot of sheds, 1,000 yards or less from where I parked. I typically always make a loop. I hardly ever hike out and in the exact same way. I know sometimes you can't help it, but so stay focused all the way to your vehicle. You just never know what you might find. I remember finding one with Dustin from the Shedding Life. I don't remember how many miles we'd put on, probably 5 or 6 altogether. I'd only found one, and I was literally walking next to the paved highway back to my car. I was 30 yards from my car and found a little 3-point. So don't quit looking till you get to the vehicle. Well, we just found our third shed for the hike. Chalky 3-pointer that's got a busted tip. The tip was actually laying right next to it, but I didn't pick up the tip. That was pretty cool. So speaking of tips, let's hit a couple more tips to help you find more sheds. One of the things that I've learned to do is every couple of 100 yards, I'll stop and do a 360. I want to look back at where I just came through, but from a different perspective, especially kind of in high sage like I'm in today, because you can walk right by a shed. I mean, if it's on the other side of a bush and you happen to be looking right and it's left, I mean, I've done it. In fact, the last time I was out here, I stopped, I did that 360, and about 90 degrees to my right, I found a shed that I hadn't seen from the other direction. So, slow down from time to time, stop, and just give yourself a good 360. And even if you don't do a full 360, at least look behind where you just came through so that you can see it from a different perspective. And then probably the last tip I'll give, and it won't necessarily help you find more sheds, but it'll just help you have a better experience. And that's just be grateful. Be grateful for anything you find. Even if it's a little stumpy base, if it's chalk. I've had guys comment on my channel that they've been looking for sheds. Now, I don't think they go out and look for them regularly, but just as they're in the mountains, they've been looking for them and they've never found a shed. And so just be grateful, and then just be grateful to be out. Even if you don't find anything, just be grateful to be healthy enough to get out and tromp around in God's creation and see some beautiful country. So I hope those are helpful. Again, I don't pretend to be the shed expert. These aren't the end-all, be-all tips, but I do think if you incorporate some of these, they'll help you find more sheds. Thanks so much for coming along. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this video up with the Minute on the Mountain. If you're newer to the channel, in every video I post, I try to share biblical truth or some biblical encouragement, and today's is going to come from Matthew 13, and beginning in verse 45. I view shed hunting a lot as kind of treasure hunting. It's really cool when you find treasure on the mountain. And this is the parable about the pearl of great price, where there was a merchant who was looking for a pearl of great value, and when he found it, he sold everything he had so he could get his hands on that pearl. And Jesus compared that to the kingdom of heaven. That's how valuable a relationship with God through Jesus Christ is, that we should be willing to give up everything to obtain it. We surrender everything to Jesus. We get that relationship through him. It's more valuable than anything. It's more precious than gold. And so I hope you'll treat it that way this week. Thanks so much for coming along. God bless you guys. We'll see you the next time we're out on the mountain.